Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Caleb Buchanan, and I'm fortunate enough to be the moderator of the panel Global Technology and Innovation That Serves All. And I'd like to start off with thanking Liberty University, Dave Pratt, and the excellent job he's doing at the business school here. I think you'll hear from this team a little bit later the talent that he's producing. Many of these members are talking with them and doing internships with the business school and the work they're doing at Liberty. So thank you so much for the work you do with that. And the African nations in our audience, thank you guys as well for being here and spending a few minutes with us. Do a quick introduction of myself and the other individuals on the panel. Caleb Buchanan, I'm a healthcare executive. I also spent time in the financial services and also in the innovation and technology space. The first individual I got an honor to introduce that's sitting to my left is Josh Cherinsky. So Josh, like myself, is a fellow Air Force Academy graduate. Josh actually spent a lot of time playing football and was a track field athlete at the academy. He then spent some time in the United States Air Force where he was a finance officer before he transitioned to the civilian workforce, where he has an extensive career working with technology companies and different government agencies and is considered a data expert. Josh is not only known for his leadership and data expertise, but as a fearless individual who puts his life on the line for others. One of my favorite stories about Josh is when he risked his life to save another individual who was caught in a dangerous riptide. Thank you, Josh, for being here. Next up is Venu Yera. He is the founder of ID Entity and a platform called Rebus. So Venu is a lifetime learner, and customer experience are Venu's passion. From being an engineer at Microsoft to establishing a global brand with ID Entity, his journey has offered an opportunity to live the full entrepreneurial life cycle. His platform called Rebus, or also known as Rhythm of Business, is a change management workflow automation platform utilizing robotic process automation and AI. He's currently working on digital currency platforms, e-government, and uniform digital ID models. And his platforms offer business agility, a uniquely practical approach to ensuring quick business results. Customer success is ID Entity success, knowing that each customers are unique and their challenges compelling, hence strategy and empathy. Taking a visual approach to strategizing, offering comprehensive infographics that help leaders gain unique insights quickly. One thing I would also like to add about Venu, he's very humble and does not talk about much, but when he was with Microsoft, he brought many solutions to them. One that you guys may know is called Excel. He's also worked with platforms such as SharePoint. So thank you, Venu, as well, for being here with us today. Next we have is John. Actually, John is sitting on the end. So John Strathy is the CFO for ID Entity. John currently serves, as I said, the CFO for ID Entity. He has led the company to over a 247% revenue growth over a 3-year period, as well as led the team to being selected as a top 100 best place to work by the Seattle Business Magazine. He's the founder of Reality Consulting, which focuses on successful implementation of finance, HR, marketing, operations, and technology strategies. Mr. Strathy is involved in various organizations such as Grow 50, CXO Collective, and the Bellevue Rotary. Over the last 5 years, he's advised entrepreneurs, startups on business strategy, building out back office operations, raising funds from angel investors, and product development. John, thank you for being here with us today. And last is Michael McPherson. He's the founder of McPherson CPI. And Mike, as he goes by, has been called an innovation legend and a force of nature by senior leaders across the Department of Defense. He has successfully led the implementation of dozens of major business systems and training programs across the U.S. Department of Defense and NATO. Prior to his recent retirement as a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force, Mike held the position of Director of Integration and Quality Assurance for the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Financial Management. He has commanded in the U.S. Air Force, was an instructor at the Defense Resource Management Institute, where he has taught finance, logistics, systems engineering, and decision science to students from around the world. Mike has authored and implemented several military training programs for NATO and the DoD on topics of logistics and finance, and frequently publishes blogs and articles on leadership and innovation. Mike is now an entrepreneur and a consultant. His company is McPherson CPI, and current projects include building solutions to improve leadership and mentoring, establish organizational continuity, and streamlining acquisitions and crowdsourcing innovation. So Mike, thank you for being here as well. And the first question I have for the panel, and really be for each one of you to take, is our topic is around really innovation and technology for all in Africa. And what does that really mean to you? And Vanu, I'd like to kick it off with you.
So thank you for having us here and talking through innovation. I think it's a big subject to talk through it, but purely from innovation and government perspective, the focus of improving infrastructure comes first, and then comes improving government services. So e-government is a big subject. We've been very involved in that particular area. Along with e-government is the concepts that actually come with it, because e-government actually brings a lot of citizen services. Citizen services that are very helpful in in taking government to reach to the citizen. Plus, on top of that, save a lot of taxpayer money. E-government, then comes the digital currencies. I think across the world there is a push towards understanding how digital currencies can work. And last but not the least is a uniform ID for all citizens across, for a digital ID that can be actually used for healthcare, that can be used in all kinds of services. So from an innovation perspective, there's a lot of other things that can be done, but from what we've been dealing with, we've actually helped US government, we've helped a couple of other countries in the Middle East, specifically in e-government, as well as in developing digital IDs.
Thank you, Vanu. Josh?
Thanks, Caleb. As a data expert, I like to look at everything from that perspective, but even more importantly is building a foundation of trust is probably the most important thing. Pretty much 99% of all technology innovations that are out there fail because there is no foundation of trust. So when I look at that kind of question, I'm trying to figure out how to build that foundation of trust, especially with the African people, because without that, no matter what you build on top of that, it'll topple over if that foundation isn't strong. So I like to look at everything from a data analytics perspective, and a lot of the solutions that are implemented out there produce a tremendous amount of data. Most people don't know what to do with that data. They store it on a hard drive, they store it on a server, and it sits there until someone wants to look it up, and then it's very difficult. Really, what I see is to help the African nations to help build that trust and build that transparency of that data is to be transparent between the government, its citizens, and businesses. So you can have a large amount of investments flow into the country, help build that trust, build out those infrastructure projects, the digital currencies, the digital IDs, those sorts of things that the African people need to help grow a strong economy. And that's what I think really needs to happen with technology and innovation in Africa.
Thank you, Josh. John?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm thankful to be here because I'm very encouraged to see the number of world leaders that are contributing to their countries, and kind of the verse that comes to mind is 2 Chronicles 7:14, where it states that, seek first God's face, He'll hear your voice and heal your land. And I'm very thankful to hear that there's people in country leadership that are focused on seeking God's face. So with respect to the question, and technology for all. So for investors, there's going to be a significant growth wave coming to Africa that's going to hit them, and it will provide a lot of opportunity. It'll be similar to the 50s in post-World War America, when America rapidly grew. You'll also see a similar pattern in China from the mid-90s to the mid-2000s, where their economy rapidly grew. And then that wave is going to be coming to Africa, and they'll need to be ready and be prepared for that. The other opportunity is the opportunity to leapfrog in technology. So Africa is able to deploy the latest and greatest technologies, from wireless connectivity healthcare, finance, and in our space for idea entity process automation.
Thank you. And Mike, I'm going to follow up with you.
Sure, thank you. And thank all of you and Liberty University for having us. This is an exciting opportunity. And this question is particularly near and dear to my heart. I spent about 10 years of my life dedicated to stability operations. And part of that is a realization over the years of studying this that stability comes in developing countries because of forms of power. And as any structure, you have to have strong foundations, and the people are a strong foundation. You're all familiar with money as a form of power and combat as a form of power, but there are other forms of power, and I believe innovation is a form of power because it's an opportunity. It's something that motivates all of us, and so the more we can inspire people to innovate and meet those challenges, the more encouraged they are to grow as people take ownership of their own problems, and that is power. And so we really want to stabilize the world. We really want to go out there and do the good work. We have to make people feel like they have an opportunity through innovation, and that's what innovation means to me.
Thank you. And obviously, you're very passionate about that, Mike, and so I would love it for you to even dive a little bit more on innovation.
Sure. So recently, one of my favorite projects is what I call targeted innovation. I've spoken around the nation quite a bit on this, and targeted innovation takes two forms. One is where you focus on your most important areas of your organization, and you focus your innovation right there. Another form, it's the one I'm really passionate about now, and I have some projects on this, is problem-oriented innovation, where you seek the problem first, and then you find the solutions. So we have a platform built on a tool called Community Force, which is a awards management capability, but it's also a crowdsourcing capability. So what we do is we find a person with a problem, and that problem has a value. What we try to do is monetize that problem. We introduce that problem to an investor, and that investor to a system integrator or someone who is a solution architect. And then in order to make it work, we offer the ability to map the end-to-end process from inception all the way to completion, because without follow-through, there is no innovation. It's just an invention. And so there has to be follow-through. That's, when it comes down to innovation, those are the real points that I'd love to, anybody that wants to talk about innovation or leadership in the innovation space, there's a lot of people out there claiming to be innovation experts. And I just challenge you, they should be follow-through experts. That's what matters.
You just touched on leadership. You made a comment there. Expand a little bit more on that comment, if you don't mind. Leadership.
Sure. You're hitting all the great topics that I'm passionate about, because as we look across this great university, it is a nest bed of leadership. That's not the truth everywhere, because leadership is something you have to be passionate for. It's hard, right? So passion means to suffer. The passion of the Christ was the suffering of Christ. If you want something to work, you have to be willing to suffer for it. And leadership means you have to be willing to suffer. It's not just making decisions. It's not just being the top of the food chain. So when we talk about leadership, you have to actually get to know the people you work with in order to know their problems so you can innovate solutions to it. And that comes through mentoring. And so one of our other projects we're working on right now is how do you teach people how to mentor, not just lead. I mean, I love John Maxwell, and I love a lot of the books that are out there on leadership, but I've yet to see a scoped problem that says, hey, you're a leader, how do you talk to your people? I've challenged general officers and senior people in the government, and a lot of them look back at me and say, we've never been taught that. This is the US military, the best leaders in the world, supposedly. If you can't learn how to talk to people, you can't lead them. I think Christians have this in spades. We talk to people all day long. This is what we do. That's what's in our heart. In order to lead in the innovation space, in the development, in the technology space, you still have to talk to people. You still have to mentor people. So I'd love to talk to anybody about mentoring. Back.
Thank you, Mike. It was such a great message, and that's going to lead right into John. And the question I have for you is, as we discuss business in Africa, and as Mike touched on leadership and training, can you explain what you feel are the right ingredients for what you look for in partners?
Yeah, so for partners, so we're primarily looking for folks that where we have common understanding of values, and some of the values that we seek to have are a hyper focus on customer-driven success. So to help our customers be successful, that's where we spend most of our time. And then looking at the outcomes that they need to achieve so that we can close the gap and help them be successful. We look for folks that are domain experts in their area, and that could be in country, in the region. It could be in their industry. It could be with a specific client. So those are some of the key things that we're looking for.
Thank you, John. Vanu, I'm going to transition to you and really like to hear more about e-government, smart cities, policy, and digital standardization, especially around citizen services.
Awesome. So e-government. So it's a subject that is fairly interesting. We've been very involved in the last 3-4 years between what we do as a U.S. government federal contractor, along with some of the work that we've done with other countries, a couple of countries in the Middle East. E-government actually has a number of different phases. So there is a government to citizen, there is a government to business, and a government to government, all three areas. Typical e-government solutions that we have reference to are all citizen-focused services. Payment services, services that are related to how citizens can get any kind of government access directly through the internet. But government to business and government to government does not get the same level of focus. One of the main areas that we kind of really focus on right now is helping government deal with government to government. There's a lot of inefficiencies when government needs to talk to other agencies internally. Rebus, as a product, has focused in this specific area, trying to actually improve the overall outcomes for the government. There are places where we've actually increased the efficiencies by about even 50%. Now, what is the result of something like that? A result of something like that is savings on taxpayer money. The same taxpayer money that gets actually wasted on labor-intensive tasks can be turned into citizen services that are absolutely really required. The second area that we've actually seen a significant amount of value come through with government to government is the ability to transparently share information between various different agencies. I can give you a very simple example. I mean, we were working on a major effort with one of the Department of Defense clients, and just getting them working with a couple of other agencies and actually helping them share that information has saved them millions of dollars. It's a huge savior. Department of Education, another great example, where we actually entered, and from a student loan perspective, I know it's a hot button subject to everybody in this country, but we actually saved them close to about 12% as we were working through that process. Last but not the least, the government to business function is one of the least looked upon solution from e-government. Businesses work with government. They have to actually pay taxes. They have to actually, get licenses. A lot of times, that information is very hard to actually deal through. Even the best e-government solutions that are actually put out there, they've been all very focused on the citizen side. So what we're really trying to do with the US government and with some of the governments that we're working across is to actually help them set the stage, not only for government to citizen, which is an essential service, but also set it for government to business and government to government. And Rebus plays a role in all three. Last thing, as we look through these solutions, one of the big things that actually adds value there is the concept of digital IDs. The concept of actually being able to uniquely identify an individual or a business as they go through the process. So that part of the e-government, but something that actually is driven as a separate infrastructure.
Thank you, Vanu. And that goes right to you, Josh. And really, you have a tremendous experience in implementing and utilizing systems across the globe. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the data, about data, the importance of data analytics, and what this can do for a company or a country, and their ability to get investors.
Absolutely, Caleb. Thanks for that question. This is my passion is data, and I've implemented over 100 systems across the globe, anywhere from Afghanistan to Honduras, Central South America, and I really enjoyed it. And one of the things about data analytics, everyone will talk to you, hey, we're going to implement this big AI ML algorithm, and it's going to fix everything for you. What they don't tell you is that technology is an enabler. The functional expert and the people on the ground that know the political environment, know the data environment, understand everything about the business, that's what drives a successful data integration solution. And I see that. I really see the African people being a key part in building out their data analytics platform from the ground up. Starting out small and building up to that AI ML capability that you can really bring investors in to help build the economy. And let me tell you a little story about kind of the data integration concepts that I'm talking about here. So I was just fresh out of the Air Force. I joined a company, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna save the world here. I'm gonna integrate and sell the Air Force this data integration solution, bring in 25, 30 different data sources, and implement it across the Air Force. And I first approached it from a technology perspective. Air Force said, no, thank you, we're good. So then I came back to them. I said, hey, I have a solution here, but same thing. I approached it from the ground up. I approached it from the airmen. I approached it from the young leaders, the young lieutenants, the young captains. And eventually, we were able to work our way up through the Air Force and absolutely revolutionize the way they do business. There was a competing program that was trying to do the same thing I was doing. They spent $1 billion on it. Didn't succeed. Failed. And with all the work that we did with the young lieutenants, the young leaders, at the lower levels of the Air Force, it finally got up to the top, and they said, "Hey, this is what we need. Let's deploy this across the Air Force." So, and it had nothing to do with technology, because I'm not going to tell you which technology to use, because you'd probably laugh, but it doesn't matter. We had the experts on the ground that were able to build out these data integration solutions. We had the leadership involved from all levels, ground up, and this is 7 years in the making, and we're finally getting to that AI ML. We actually implemented an Air Force system for a lot less, like less than 1% of what the competing platform tried to do. We did for less than 1%. It was a huge savings, and if you approach those problems, those AI ML problems, which are the end all be all, but you approach them from the ground up, you'll find that will that'll be the crux of your of the success of your systems.
Sure.
And I'm really, if anyone wants to talk to me about that, I'd love to walk you through my my methodology and help the African people build out these fantastic data integration solutions.
Josh, as you're talking about that, and other panels we want to jump into, touch a little bit more on security and compliance and trust. I think those are three key words there.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. So remember in my introduction, I said that trust is the crux of everything. That's what we were doing, is we were building trust with the people, the lower level folks on the ground that are actually doing the day-to-day work, doing the hard work, all the way up to the leaders. So without that trust, this would have never worked. The security piece, that's also a level of trust, because you have issues with the IT folks that say, hey, is your data secure? And they have to trust you and ensure that you're handling that data responsibly. Because as we know, in America especially, you can do a lot of damage with data, and you have to be very responsible for that. And if everyone lived like the Bible says you should live, we probably wouldn't have that problem. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And hopefully we can fix that. And really the last thing is the compliance piece, right? Again, you build trust with the auditors. These auditors are going to come in and they're going to audit your system. They want to ensure your data is right. They have to trust you that you're doing everything you can to make sure that you pass those audits, that your data is compliant with their rules and regulations and whatnot. So that's something that, again, foundation of trust, go from the bottom up, or build from the bottom up, really, to really help deploy those successful capabilities that you're looking for.
Thank you, Josh. Now, Madhu, I want to go back to you in a topic that is always hot. It's healthcare. And now that we've had a global pandemic, it's even hotter than ever. And something that, as a healthcare operator myself and have extensive experience in that, deeply passionate, can you go a little deeper into how your platform could impact countries in Africa within the healthcare, especially in the context of this pandemic and a digital ID?
So, with the pandemic, I think healthcare has always been at the center of discussion when it comes to any kind of system implementations. But with the pandemic, I think it has taken a new role in itself, or a new meaning in itself. Now, technology and innovation in healthcare it's not new. Everybody has been looking for solutions. There are health systems, hospital health systems that have been built and have been used. Now, when you look at the number of different types of care that are really available, the medical technology that is really available, the connections that are available, the types of machines that are actually coming out, and the advancements that are happening. Obviously, like Josh said, all of those integrations are really, really important. But another thing that becomes really, really important is, because we don't know where we will go for health or for our health care. I mean, we might go to the same hospital most of the time for regular health care, but in the need of an emergency, we might go elsewhere. The digital ID becomes an extremely important part of the life. The concept of actually being able to carry your information becomes really important. Another thing that actually is very interesting, and there are various different aspects of this and controversial subjects. A lot of the information for the patient in the healthcare system stays in health systems. So these are health systems that large hospitals have actually hosted and stay there. If, as a patient, I do need access to it, there are very limited possibilities. So patient care and patient-centric care is one of the critical elements that we're trying to develop with our platform. And the concept of actually combining a digital ID, making sure that the electronic health record is available to the patient as quickly and on demand as possible, is one of the central tenets that we're driving. How are we going to really do that? So one of the main focus areas that we have right now within the platform, and I think something that is useful for some of the countries that are still actually trying to implement this. If you look at the historical implementation of electronic health records, large hospital systems became a natural progression to store this information. And with that came everything that Josh talked about: security, compliance, audit. So the HIPAA rules in this country restrict people from having access to the data, to the point that the patient themselves have an extremely tough time trying to get access to their own data. But it doesn't have to be that way. It can be very simple. So our solutions are always going to start with a patient-centric model, where the patient has access to the data and has the rights to access it and request it. and be able to build on top of it. So our solutions are going to be device independent, meaning you can get it on devices. So we have one solution that we're deploying right now, where the patient-centric solution that is available with the patient can access and request the information that is very specific to the patient. This is not anything related to any kind of security. This is my own information. I have to have access to it, and I will deal with it with myself. So this is care data. This is information about, the various different procedures that I've gone through, and be able to access it. The central tenet around all of this is having a digital ID and being able to use the digital ID to access all of that information across all health systems. So that's how Rebus is trying to actually build that. Now, for countries that are still in the process of implementing this solution, we can leapfrog. And I think somebody was saying this yesterday. If there is no need for building a certain type of infrastructure, we don't need to build it. And that's the key here. So for countries that have not really implemented healthcare systems the way that they have been implemented here, I think there's a better opportunity and there is a greater capability here that if we build it with patient-centric model, putting patient first, I think it'll create the best value proposition for the healthcare system.
Thank you, Vidhu. And I would also like to add also the collaboration piece between providers and the connectivity with that patient, the collaboration with the patient. Your tool that I've seen certain things, and won't go further detail than that, but it's at a high level. But I don't know if you want to touch any more real quickly.
I'm glad you reminded that. So the second part of the problem that the patients typically have across the world, and I think U.S. is not any different or any other countries are different. I go to the doctor, I meet the doctor gives me some recommendations for about 10 minutes. I talk to them. Some of it I understand. There are some doctors who are a little bit more patient than others. I capture that information, I come back. But none of this information is codified anywhere for me to go back and refer to it. And if I am the patient and there is a caregiver that needs to really understand it, that information isn't available anywhere. So with the system, what we're trying to capture is, we're trying to capture everything that the doctor is saying, but make it really selectively visible to the patient if this information is for the patient and for the caregiver. The advantage here is that the patient can have this information on demand and collaboratively go back to the provider, in this particular case, the doctor, to ask questions. Today, that particular model does not exist, and we're building it. Our tool has it. The platform is going live very soon.
Right, thank you, Vidhu. That is really impressive. What a game changer, I would say, for the patient, for nations to be able to take care of. And so thank you for sharing a little bit about ways Rebus and your platform can impact Africa. Josh, I'm going to go back to you now. With the many years of experience with working with startups, technology companies, and U.S. government, can you please touch on ways you feel your experience and how you can help companies and countries in Africa?
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. So I have a lot of experience, and here's another passion of mine besides data. I love connecting technology companies with, in this case, the U.S. government, but I'd love to start connecting them to Africa. So I'm a managing partner of a company called the Tech Advocates, and we connect technology to government. And most of you might not believe this, but the U.S. government has a hard time capitalizing off the latest and greatest technologies. They're usually 5 to 10 years behind, which blows all of our mind, blows my mind. And so when I learned this, I viewed this as a national security issue, and I really wanted to find a way to solve this. It's a hard problem to solve, but we're chipping away at the armor. We're getting AI, ML companies that can actually deliver. We got cybersecurity, drone companies. We have business process automation, like Rebus is a platform that I brought into the DoD, and they're doing a fantastic job, by the way. And we have a microelectronics expert, which is a very big deal right now across the world. So that's our mission. And it was amazing because I saw this great technology that Vanu's team created called Rebus, brought it to the DoD, and they were able to implement over 13 enterprise systems in the past 18 months. And to kind of give you a comparison, most companies will either fail, not deliver one in 18 months, or they might get one barely. So that kind of gives you an idea of the rapid capability that an innovative company like Rebus, an idea entity, has to deliver these solutions across a very, very complicated, very austere environment, because it doesn't only reach to the main infrastructure of the DoD, it also reaches to all their forward deployed locations as well. So
And one more thing to add on that, Josh, and sorry to interrupt you, but as you're talking about implementation, why don't you talk a little bit about the results, too, of that? So not just the implementation, but the success of the implementation.
yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that Rebus did is it revolutionized the way the DoD or U.S. Army Medical Command did their medical acquisitions. And it saved them 8 months on the process. So they get their technology, they get their capabilities faster. They were able to recoup on a yearly basis $250 million out of a $1.5 billion budget. So that's about 15% of their budget. That's must-pays. These are treat wounded warriors. These are folks that we have to take care of, right? And because of Rebus, they were able to do that. And the other thing is, the leaders were able to strategize instead of trying to figure out what they had to approve. They were able to sit in a meeting and actually strategize because they weren't focused on the compliance, again, because they trusted the system, built on a foundation of trust. And these leaders were able to just focus on what they need to do is make decisions. And they made some great decisions and saved a lot of money and probably saved a lot of lives, honestly.
Thank you, Josh. And I think you guys might have heard it. And I know this story because he's told me before, but it went from over 8 months to the process to 2 weeks. So really impressive change management tool. John, you've done and are currently doing business around the world and have partnered with multiple companies. What does multi-country operational success look like? And what are some of the challenges you faced?
So the first thing that always comes to mind is the opportunity and the excitement that comes, and that's generally from the knowns, the things that you know about the opportunity, you get excited. Then there's the unknowns, and that's where the stress comes in. So what we look for is looking to have, for a company to be successful, there needs to be three components. There's the technical or subject matter expert in your product and services and solutions. There's an operations person, and then there's a salesperson and someone to build relationships and bring in revenue. So for us, we had a client, which was Microsoft. We had a project that we had done a prototype for them. It was successful. It started getting excitement, and they wanted to expand and do more development of that product, or that solution. However, they had limited budget. So for us as a supplier to them, we came up with an opportunity to pitch them about opening an offshore development center in India. So fortunately, we were able to have revenue when we first opened, which that covers up a lot of mistakes and makes it a lot easier. But the other key to the component was having an in-country operations person and team to run the facility and interact with the customer as well. So we identified a key resource who was able to then introduce us to additional folks. Help us start with the recruiting and hiring of talent. Help secure our operational needs through real estate, so an office, financial services support, banking relationships and such. And then the other opportunity we had was opening in the United Kingdom, and that was through the British Library. We had an opportunity with them. Once again, we were fortunate enough to have revenue in country. And there we kind of repeated the same thing we had learned and experienced in opening our office in India. We hired a local resource. But that one was more challenging because we found that resource wasn't as connected as we needed them to be in driving new sales. And while they had opportunities that we discussed, they weren't necessarily as successful as we needed them to be. So my recommendation would be always to continue growing your network.
I'll just interrupt one very specific topic around that, and I think one of the areas that I wanted to add to it, I think what John said is great. When we look for implementing solutions, by the way, we're looking for channel partners across the globe. Africa is an opening that we're really looking at for our product. We have a tremendous amount of interest. We compete with a number of big names right now, but we're very successful. But going back to that comment, what are we really looking for from our partners? I think what we're really looking from our partners is local knowledge. Knowledge of the local positioning, whether it is a historical perspective or a contextual perspective. If we're going into a finance solution, do we have the financial subject matter experts? We may bring financial subject matter experts as we know, but from a context perspective within the country, do we have the knowledge? And that's what the partner brings to the table. That's the subject matter expertise we're looking for. That's the context that we're really looking for. The second thing is, everything happens when rubber hits the road, right? So for us, one of the main areas of focus is in creating customer success is not what the solution actually is. It's what the customer, how the customer behavior really goes through the entire segment. Because every customer is different, every country is different, every engagement is different. So from a partner, what we're expecting is to hear, understand, and behave according to the local traditions and local expectations. And last but not the least, as we go through these things, we want common value systems. We want to learn from you, and the same thing from us. We can bring the knowledge that we have, but we don't expect that you will have, I guess the best way to say it, we bring some knowledge, you bring some knowledge, and we will all work together to actually make customers successful. And nothing succeeds like success. We've always seen this. Every time, even the smallest success has actually brought us some of the biggest accolades, and it's only a starting point. So we're really looking for partners.
Great. Thank you, Vinu. And teamwork and leadership, we've heard it throughout. And execution, and that's what I really want to end on. I know we have just a couple minutes here at the end. And so as leaders, we all know how important execution is for any initiative, project, company, or country. Within the context of technology initiatives, I believe the data states that around 51% of projects fail. So let me just rephrase that. Over half of the projects fail on technology initiatives. Of those that are successful, under 40% are completed on time and on budget. And the members of this panel have a track record of success on execution. Mike, to close this up, can you tell us more about your experience and the importance of implementation and good integrators?
Sure, thank you. So Einstein once said if he had a minute to solve a problem, that he would spend the first 55 seconds asking the right question, and then 5 seconds coming up with a solution. What they don't tell you is that he spent years afterwards following through. Implementation is where everything comes to fruition. And so you might have a good problem, you might have a good solution, but what you really need is delivery. When in the Department of Defense, a real good example of this, in 2007, we tried to build a financial services capability to service 1.2 million airmen across the Air Force. And we spent $40 million. We moved them all from their homes. We gave up 750 bodies saying, we got this, we know what we're doing. We hired a big company that did not know our business. They spent the next 2.5 years and $40 million, and in the end, we were worse off than we were before because they didn't know what they were doing. We reapproached with this team. This is where I met this team in 2017. Within 18 months and with a fraction, 1/10 of that cost, we had it deployed across the Air Force because of the follow through. The first people we got on the team were subject matter experts, and the rest were change managers. And that's what it takes. The other thing I'll add is that there's a lot of platforms out there. There's Salesforce, there's Oracle, there's Microsoft. You can choose all of these. The danger in that, and this is coming from years of experience, is that you're paying for 95% of stuff you don't need. And you're paying for a sales staff that you don't need. What attracted me to Rebus as a tool is that it's a chameleon. It can work on any platform that you're working on. But it can also, you don't pay for what you don't need. It gets adapted to what you need. And therefore, you're going to save the money, you're going to save the time, and you're not going to have the training burden that using some other tool and the long time life of that tool that you have to pay for. That's what led to success for us. I think that's what follow through means, is having a long-term strategy. And one last thought, keep it simple. Simplicity is the new innovation. The simpler it is, the better it is. And so don't let people dazzle you with lots of complexity. It doesn't help. It makes things worse.
Great. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, all the panelists. I believe we got our time cut a little short, so I don't think we have time for questions due to we had to be a little bit flexible because I know we have another panel coming up. But the team will be here to answer other questions in the back if you have any. I want to thank all of our panelists. And again, thank all the African nations and everyone here in the audience. And a big thank you to Liberty University and Dave Pratt for just what an excellent conference he's put on. Again, thank you and have a great rest of your day.